Hi, folks. The penultimate presentation for this afternoon is coming up in just a moment. Let's get straight into the intelligence. It is titled Everywhere Commerce, and I'd like to invite onto stage the gentleman who will present. He is the global head of digital transformation at Nike. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Greg Merrill. And the moderator for this session from Venture, she is the venture partner of Lyra Ventures, Miss Debra Langley.
Thank you.
Have a good session.
I am so excited to be hosting this conversation with Greg Merrill. He is a visionary leader and innovator, and he's a great friend. Greg is a force of nature when it comes to the world of transformation. His career is, I would say, a masterclass in building, running, and evolving companies across a wide range of industries, ranging from sustainable energy to health and fitness and iconic apparel brands. Throughout this journey, he has honed a really unique and specific skill set at the intersection of strategy, innovation, technology, and partnerships. He's a passionate leader with an infectious zest for life, and he inspires teams everywhere to build scalable and sustainable businesses that also make a contribution to a more equitable future. Greg's commitment, personal commitment to diversity, equity, and inclusion is something I admire enormously and for which he's very well known. And this is evidenced by his great support for a variety of diverse groups. Before we get into today's conversation, though, I want to ask Greg to just give us a little bit more insight into what is a remarkable career, and then maybe just touch on what you're up to now.
Amazing. Thank you for that, Debra. Lovely intro. And thank you all for being here. 10 years from now, we can all look back and say, we were all at the first NRF APAC. So, and it's getting close to the end of the second day, and you all are still here. So I want to thank you all for being here, as time is the ultimate investment. So thank you all for being here, and thank you for being up here with me, Debra. I have had the unique opportunity to sort of walk many paths in my journey, and as Debra mentioned, started sort of health and wellness, turned into 3-time company founder, corporate executive at Nike, and now more kind of board and advisory type work, all focused sort of around growth and transformation. And Debra talked about some of the threads that kind of run through some of those. I know we'll get into those a little bit. We don't have slides. This is a very casual conversation that we're going to have. And I look at success as sort of the topping of a mountain of failures. And if nothing more than this, I hope that you walk away learning from some of my failures and maybe what not to do. So if you walk away with that and a little bit of fun, then we did our job. Okay?
Okay. Okay. Are you ready?
Let's do it.
Okay. So listening to the sessions over the last couple of days and walking the exhibition floor, I think it's super clear that there's been a seismic shift in customer expectations. And as these tech solutions that are meeting those needs become infused with more and more AI, I think it's safe to say that those expectations are just only going to increase. I think the customer journey today is quite rich. It's not linear. In fact, it seems really old school to say the customer journey is a one-way path, because it isn't. Today, it's not even a funnel. It's more like a continuous stream of interactions across back and forth between online and offline, mobile, gaming, social, audio, streaming, live streaming, and on and on. So we're reaching a point where if you can see it, and you can hear it, and you can engage with it, you should be able to shop it. And I think if you look at any little kid, that is exactly the world that they are looking for. So for brands and retailers, I think it means they have to be fully present, and they have to be commerce-enabled wherever, whenever, and however the customer shows up. And that experience they deliver, it better be hyper-personalized, it better be consistent, and it better be convenient. So given that, given this is this world of everywhere commerce, how do you see brands and retailers responding to not just the opportunity, but the challenges?
I love that, because I think you've clearly mapped out the true complexity of the situation. And if you come at it from obsessing the problem, then you can sort of come to the solution later. On top of brands and retailers needing to be, everything to everybody, everywhere, all at once, specific to the APAC region, we've heard a lot the last couple of days around the true kind of complexity and the beautiful diversity of this area. When you layer on language, different languages, cultures, currencies, and that's even before we get to, legal and regulatory changes between countries within the region. So I'm sort of adding to the complexity that you started with, because I think once you put all the pieces on the table, you really understand how challenging it can be for brands and retailers that are either trying to move into this region in particular or expand and grow within the region if they're already here. Now, on top of that, we've heard a lot of folks talk about centering the customer in everything you do, and the rate of change that customers and their preferences are on is higher than ever. So, okay, we've obsessed the problem. We know the challenges here, and I will offer this, and I won't necessarily talk specific tactics that you might take, but I'll lead with the punchline. I think there's 3 things that a brand or retailer that wants to succeed in this area needs to do: speed, agility, and modularity. And if we break those 3 down for just a minute. So speed, things that I think about are growth mindset, a culture of learning and innovation, and these are organizational challenges. And it's not only enough to understand what the consumer wants, but to move at their speed and move at their pace, because guess what? If you don't, somebody else will, and they already are. Okay, so you've got speed. Now, agility, you can look at agility from sort of an organizational lens or from a talent lens. And actually, I think that's with agility, I look at the human side, the talent aspect of organizations in particular, because it's not only enough to have the right people in the right roles at the right time, but now we look at capacity and bandwidth, and is your organization primed to understand what you need to do and then go out and get things done, right? The vision, the strategy, the planning, and then the execution. Okay, so you've got agility. We talked speed, we talked agility, and then modularity. And again, you can look at these from different angles, but with modularity, I look at from a technology standpoint, and this is my own bias, as this is the life that I'm in. I look at modularity of technology from the lens of most companies that are maybe 20 years or older have a legacy tech problem.
Right.
Right? We talk about the Frankenstack, right? Where 20 years ago, as technologies came online and companies needed to bring these technologies in and build them into their core business, well, guess what? You fast forward today, and now you have these big monolithic technology stacks that no longer serve the business at the right speed. So, I think of Legos. I don't know if anybody plays Legos. I don't, but it's a good symbolism for the modularity of technology. Are you able to peel apart pieces of your tech stack that's powering your business to very quickly and easily replace them with other elements or other components that you now need to serve your customers' needs? So anyway, I'll leave it there, but speed, agility, and modularity are, I think, some of the key ingredients that any company, brand, and retailer will need to do well in this space. So
given that, whether I'm an enterprise with a legacy tech stack that I'm struggling with, or I'm an SME, I'm just getting going, forming this 360 view of the customer, is there one piece of tech that you say, start here, this is going to move the needle the most?
Maybe one in particular is a unified commerce technology. So let me back up. I think also technology has got to be invisible. It has to be seamless, especially when you look at, the younger consumers that are coming up and purchasing, through social channels and whatnot. That's the digital age. They came up expecting technology to work for them. So that must be true. I think technology is an enabling function, and it's got to be invisible. But I think one in particular is a company called NewBlack.
Newblack.io, y'all.
Newblack.io. They're a Dutch unified commerce, software company that essentially builds in that speed and modularity into the tech stack. So, I mention them because as I look around and see folks that are doing some things really well, that's one company that I would look at. They're an enterprise player, so they're not for everybody. They're more, for the $1 billion and up companies, just because they're able to navigate and handle so much complexity. But that's probably one that I think embodies, again, both that speed and modularity that I talked about.
Okay, got it. And you sit on the board of NewBlack,
I do.
Correct? Okay.
Full disclosure.
Okay. Are you allowed to speak about any of their clients?
Yes, but actually, yes. But before I go there, what I think they've done really well, where I think there's kind of a lesson for all of us to learn from, is something that was interesting that I mentioned earlier. They don't have a sales team. So they have approached it, and this is a little risky, so hear me out here. But the old, if you build it, they will come. And NewBlack sort of said, we're going to find the best partners, and we're going to build the most capable, beautiful, functional technology, and people will come, and people will want us because we're doing it better than everybody else. And it's working. Right. Okay. And so, they're part Apple, right? I mean, Apple, I don't know if anybody's worked with Apple, they're where they are for a reason, right? I mean, they're a strong partner. So, Apple, there's Adyen, a Dutch payment processing company, Jamf. So they've built this sort of strong partnership structure around themselves where they don't need a sales team. And I think that's really rare to see.
That is extraordinary.
These days.
I didn't realize that. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. I want to move us, I'm just looking at this big green number here, so just moving us along. I want to talk now about organic communities that are driving commerce. There are more than 300 million creators around the world talking about every aspect of life and popular culture. And what we find is that when people self-select around a common interest theme or a person, they're incredibly powerful. The content they create becomes our cultural signals. This content drives trends, and those trends turn into sales opportunities. And at this point, I'd like to say, if you are all not following Joanna Williams from Since Tomorrow on LinkedIn, you should be. She brings a thesis about social commerce and the people who are driving transactions that you probably want to read. And what she's pointed out is that many of these cultural signals and many of these sales opportunities are being driven by Gen Z girls. TikTok alone, it's an $11 trillion opportunity within the next few years. We're moving at the speed of culture. Brands typically don't, and nor do retailers. So what does that mean for my product development, my go-to-market, my supply chain? How?
Yeah. I mean, this is sort of cultural-led transformation at its finest. And big companies that traditionally move really slow are going to struggle with this if they sort of don't get on the bandwagon here. But when I think of individual users on a TikTok that are creating content and can monetize that, can turn that into a business overnight with no business skills required, it's phenomenal. And so when I think about a larger brand or retailer, if you look at the economic engine of whatever your business is, from all the way on the left side or on the front end, the ideation of a new product or service, and you bring it all the way down until it's in the hands of a consumer, that's your economic engine. That's the value model of your company. Well, this is where these individual influencers and creators, content creators, come in and completely change that, because at the front end, brands and retailers are not able to control as much the ideation that's coming that will eventually turn into product and service that then gets monetized. And so what do you do about that? One, I think you got to stay curious and even come to terms hey, things are changed now. Things are a little bit different. Get curious, lean in. Joanna Williams, Since Tomorrow, she has great content. I follow her content for sure. So lean in, get curious, know that you don't know everything, understand that dynamics are changing. Okay, that's step one. And then step two is, how do you retool your economic engine that we talked about so that you can bring in some of these outside influencers and content creators that are not your employees and bring them in to become now part of your business so that you can sort of tap into that opportunity, multi-trillion-dollar opportunity that you might miss out on if you don't. And this is an area where it's easy to talk about these things, but doing them is a different story. This is where sort of the discipline side of Greg, because I'm a dreamer and a innovator, but I also believe there's a role for discipline and governance. And so for your business, what are the principles or the guardrails, the framework that you might use to say, yeah, we're going to bring in these new content creators and try to partner or incorporate them into our business somehow, but we need to maintain our brand voice. We need to maintain some semblance of direction or control over what our business is doing. So setting up those principles and those guardrails that protect and keep your brand voice unified, but also empower others, whether they're employees or not, empower them to become part of your business so you can kind of do it together. So it's getting curious, leaning in, not being afraid to change, and then embracing these folks where they are. They're not consumers. They might be consumers, but they're also creators, and they hold a pretty critical key to unlocking value.
But when we look at, certainly in my industry, there are still many brands and retailers who are working on this 12-month development cycle, using trends from past season to inform next season, which might be 18 months out. How do you go from that to, there's a trend that's a really strong trend, it's going to last for 3 months, 6 months. How do you turn your engine into this more agile supply chain?
Yeah, it's a really tough question. One of the things that I think that I see brands do really well is get as close to the consumer as possible. That could be geographically,
Yeah.
that could be demographically. Look at your employee base from an age standpoint. We've talked about
Right.
18 to 24-year-olds that are creating these businesses. Are they your employees? Probably not. How can you bring them in and now have that be part of your value proposition? So being as close to the consumer as possible, I think, is the first step in doing that.
Do you think then that many companies need to revisit where their factories are?
Well, yes, and I think it opens up a much bigger conversation because, when you look at something like footwear manufacturing, largely based in China, now it's Vietnam and Indonesia. Well, why is that? It's not just cheap labor. That's not the answer. Those folks are good at it. Those industries have grown there, right? I mean, and so you have access to skilled labor. But then you start talking about things like 3D printing, right? And maybe that sort of democratizes product design, development, and ultimately manufacturing if you can put a 3D printer and get access to feedstock and put it anywhere in the world. So, the manufacturing location is just one aspect of it, but it's even kind of limited by currently available technology. And 3D printing's been around forever, and it's going to continue to grow. And there's some challenges, but it will grow. So I would actually tie this back to the modular.
Got it.
We talk speed, agility, and modularity. That's going to be the theme for us. The manufacturing modularity, when you can have sort of more miniaturized or micro factories everywhere, because there's consumers all over the world, but there's not manufacturing all over the world. So how do you change that?
Got it. Thank you. We've got a little bit of time here, so I want to switch now to the region and what you see as being what the retail landscape might look like in APAC over the coming 5 to 10 years, 5 years, from the point of view of enterprise as well as the startups.
Yeah.
Early stage retail solution providers, say.
Well, I think, and you might be getting to this, but we were talking about a report where we read about the startup ecosystem here in Singapore.
Genome, right. So Singapore, #1 startup ecosystem in Asia, and #7 globally, just announced. So yay, go us.
Yeah, I think that's big news because while we're both very active in the global venture scene, and Silicon Valley's #1, it's and New York and London, I believe, are #2, right? So those areas have dominated for many years. But when you look at, and again, we've heard yesterday and today, the economic potential that's coming out of Southeast Asia, you pair that with now this blossoming startup and innovation ecosystem. I think if you're not here, you're missing out. So I think that's part of it. Now, the other element is when you look at enterprise companies and corporates, and a lot of them want to do things on their own terms inside. And so you'll have innovation teams and incubators internal to companies and whatnot. But I think that's not enough. I think you need to do more. And we all struggle with this. This is probably a human condition where you get stuck in your own four walls and you don't spend enough time outside looking for what's next and what's new. And again, kudos to all of you for being here. The fact that you're voting with your feet and saying, I'm going to go meet new people or learn about new technologies or this, that, good on you, because there's a lot of people that aren't doing that and aren't here. And so when it comes to retail and brand and innovation and the role that enterprises and corporates play, it's still important. They're going to have to do the work, but get outside of your own four walls, stay curious, and spend more time in Singapore, obviously.
But do you think there's room for, or do you think there's something bigger here? I mean, we're very blessed in Singapore to have this kind of ecosystem. What about the rest of the region? It feels like a startup. You come to Singapore, if you're at an event like NRF, yes, you might see a lot of regional players, but typically you're in your own geographical location, right? So do you think there's an argument to be made for a regional incubator?
Yes, I think there is. And I think while we've sort of obsessed a little bit the complexity and the problems that a lot of folks are trying to solve, I think to sit down and do that, let's obsess the commonalities of the folks in this area. And even if it's something as simple as internet usage or frequency of shopping on social channels and things like that, when you start obsessing the commonalities between them, you quickly find that there are some dots to connect there. And absolutely, I mean, I think, could Singapore kind of help lead this region to develop, to become a going concern in that regard? I think we're going to see more democratization of innovation. I think folks aren't going to look at the big boys and girls, anymore. I think it's so easy now to start an idea. You can go to ChatGPT and you can come up with an idea and roll up your sleeves and raise a little bit to zero money, and you can go out and start a company easier now than ever. Back when I was doing it, 20 years ago, it was a different time. It was a much bigger challenge. It's not hard anymore. There's other challenges, but the barriers to entry are much lower.
Democratization of innovation. Okay, you heard it here first. Last question, because we've got just a couple of minutes. Final call to action for the audience, and we have a mix here of enterprise and startups. So thoughts on getting out there and building a business?
Yeah, I think, the call to action that makes most sense given our conversation up here, and I've sort of seeded the thread already on getting outside of your own four walls, but I'm gonna make it a little bit more human, and bear with me here for a minute. I think each day, each of us as human beings, whatever hats you wear beyond that, you have a chance to look in the mirror and get really raw and really vulnerable and celebrate your wins. I'm sure you all are great at some remarkable things. We all have things that we've done that are great. Celebrate those. And quickly turn towards, where are you behind? What are your challenges? What are opportunities? You can do that individually. You can do that for a team. You can do that for your company. You should do it for all of those. But see vulnerability as courage and strength. Anybody who's spent any time with me will tell you I wear my heart on my sleeve. I'm open, I'm honest, I'll call it like it is. And I think it's a muscle. It's a skill that I've developed over doing that a lot. So I would encourage all of you to get really open and raw and vulnerable with yourself. And where you're behind, go find incredible people and help them plug that gap there. Now, this might be, put your manager hat on for a minute. You need to hire somebody and you don't have the right skill set or the right teammate inside. Figure out what it is you need and go and hire that person and bring them into your company. If there are people inside your company, you say, we need more ideas on innovation, we're behind on this. There are strong people in your company. I know it right now. Go and find them. Invite them to the table, give them a voice, empower them to help your business grow and change. So I think that would be my final call to action. Thanks for, I don't know if that was a left turn, but that's, I think we're gonna go with that. And the last thing I would say, you're in venture, you're ex-operator, you've done that. Anybody who's interested in innovation or the global venture space, come see Debra. Anybody who wants to talk more about growth and transformation or technology and strategy and go-to-market, come talk to me. I'll end it where I started. You all have graced us and blessed us with your time. Thank you all for being here with us. And look around the room. You now have 1,000 new friends, and your network has grown. So go out and connect with one another. I think there's some beautiful opportunities that could come out of NRF APAC.
Greg, thank you so much. Everyone, Greg Merrill.
Thanks.
I'm going to take my water.
Greg, good stuff. I love the honesty. Debra, great questions.